And it really reinforced what we're going to do today. Because in crappy weather like this, I'd really like to be able to jumpstart my truck from the inside. Welcome to what I call the M.R.N.E.S, Merle's really neat electrical system. This is how you set up dual batteries on a truck like Merle. We have our main starting battery and you have an auxiliary battery. Your main starting battery's only job is to run your truck, right? It's your starter, your computer if you're fuel injected, only the stuff that from the factory your main starting battery was meant to run. The auxiliary battery powers everything else. So they are linked together through an isolator. What an isolator does is it's basically like a high power relay. So it shuts on and off when these two batteries are linked. So when your truck or your car or whatever you're setting up dual batteries in is running, your alternator is going to be charging it in the neighborhood of like 14 volts, right? Somewhere between 13 and a half, 14 and a half, somewhere in that ballpark. So when this is at a charging amperage, it links these two batteries together. So your alternator is hooked up to your main start battery on your positive terminal, which is also what ties it through to the other battery. So your alternator comes in and it keeps everything topped off. Then you turn your car off and your voltage is going to drop to somewhere in the 12s, right? Like 12 and a half, 12.2, somewhere in that ballpark. What this isolator does is once it sees 12.7 volts, it breaks the connection. Now these two batteries are isolated. So let's say you're camping or you're parked and you're sitting in the snow and your engine's off, but you still want to run, you know, your heated seats or your lights or your radios or whatever. That's only going to draw from your auxiliary battery. You're not going to be sitting there pulling power from your main starting battery. So when you go to start your vehicle back up, this battery still has a full charge. If for some reason there's a problem and this battery isn't charged, but your auxiliary battery is, not all isolators do this. It's important to look at the features of your isolator, but the isolator that I bought has a manual override feature. It's got a button that you can put wherever you want. I'm going to put it somewhere easy to reach inside the cab. And it overrides that 12.7 volt disconnect and it forces the batteries to be connected so you can jump start yourself. So that's my electrical system in a nutshell. Let's show you the pieces we're going to use. Here we go. So let's run through these components and then we're going to start doing this on the truck. And I'm going to use these guys on the batteries to give me more cleaner like wiring connections to run everything off of. And when I get batteries in the future, I'm going to get like a Group 34 or something that has a traditional post. So I'm going to build that with this in mind and use these. You can get these style connectors for the side posts. I just know I'm not going to stay with side posts. Then we've got our isolator. This is kind of the core of the whole system. This is an NVX isolator. It's an audio brand, but they work the same. It's just the ones that are kind of geared towards like off-roaders and overlanders and stuff have a lot of the same features, but they cost more. So I went with this one. It has really good reviews. I've used this brand before and had good results with them. So this one has a remote switch that'll go in the cab to manually link and dislink the batteries as needed. We of course have our circuit breakers for both sides of that, both the power inside and the power outside. And then I'm going to be using 2-gauge cable for this. This is OFC cable, which is oxygen-free copper as opposed to copper-clad aluminum. It's got a little bit better connectivity for transferring your electrical signals and power and all that stuff. You don't need OFC wire. It costs a little bit more than CCA wire. But if you know anything about me from my channel, anything worth doing is worth overdoing. So I got the higher end wire for it because that's what I do and I'm a glutton for punishment. All right, well, let's go over what we got to do on the truck to make this all work. There's some stuff that we're going to have to move out of the way. So to start, I got a battery mount for the passenger side. So on these trucks in the diesels, you could get a dual battery. Luckily, the truck's the same. So I ordered the mount from AMD, which should fit pretty good, better than most of the junky aftermarket stuff. But the problem is we have a gas truck. So this big old giant charcoal canister is in our way because this is right where the battery lives for the second battery. So what we're going to do, a lot of people would just pull this off and then leave your vent line open down there. I've seen that a million times. The problem with that is it vents your fuel tank into the engine bay, which if you park in the garage, it can make your garage smell like gas. And it's generally just not the right way to do it. So what I'm going to do, because this is a really simple old EVAP system, is I'm going to go down on the tank side and we're going to make a rollover vent valve. I ordered the parts for it. I don't know if they'll be here in time for this video, but we're going to remove this for this video. And if those parts get here, we'll include this. If they don't, just know I'm not just pulling this out and leaving it open. We're going to do this the right way. So this is going to come out. Our bracket's going to go in. And then we're going to make a plate here. And that's going to be what holds all of our circuit breakers and our isolator and all of that. I want that all to be real clean and organized and look nice, because I can guarantee you if I ever have to work on this when I'm out four-wheeling or whatever, it's not going to be when it's nice and bright and sunny. It's going to be when the weather's crap and it's terrible to do. So I'm going to do myself a favor now, and I'm going to build this in a way that's going to make it really easy for me to mess with in the future. So fortunately, the bolts from my old charcoal canister are the same thread pitch as the bolts for the new battery deal. And this thing takes, like, let's see, 5 bolts. This mounts with 3, but we got 2 more hidden in there. So all my hardware for the new giddy up is scavenged from the chunk I'm taking out. So fun fact, I got this cleaned out. I wiped down my fender, got all that dirt and everything out of there, and check out what I found. If you're going to do this on your Squarebody, see now, that sits in there like that. Look at that lower mount. What's that? Those are little factory dimples in the fender. And there's one up here. There just isn't one in the middle. So I'm just going to drill those out, and we're going to loosely bolt this thing in place, and then I can locate that third hole ultra precisely. And we are well on our way to having a bad system here. We got this in, just drilling out those factory holes. We're all good and bolted in. So what we're going to do now is get a battery in here, and we can start making our plate, because I'm going to have all my electrical stuff right here, and then we'll do some sort of access panel or something to get to those headlights. And luckily, GM in their infinite wisdom used the same battery for like 40 years. So I can just steal the battery out of the Cadillac, and we've got a battery for this. So now we got to figure out how I want to mount all this. Let me grab some of those components here and start getting an idea. And I think what we're going to do is come off of here and kind of float this panel out. I can tie into this factory bolt here, and we can float this panel down and kind of clean up some of this wiring and stuff too while we're at it. So that way our Our switch can be over here somewhere. We can fit our other whatchamahoozits, we can fit our circuit breakers and all that. Just kind of got to figure out the best way to do this so that it looks good. All right, let's show you what we got on the car, and we're about ready to cut this thing out of aluminum. So we've got our panel in. I marked out, this is the edge. This is where the battery tray goes to. So this is the only space that I'm going to have to work with for bead rolling and for fitting all my circuit breakers and isolator in and stuff. And then we've got the notch out for my wiring for the light bar. For the hood release, I made a little mark because I cut this one a little deeper than it needs to be. So we're going to turn this into aluminum and then get the fine details done on it. Thundering and lightning again. So I'm gonna go inside with my pieces, kind of get everything laid out. Probably not the best idea for me to be using power tools in a thunderstorm. So if it eases up, I'll be back later today. Otherwise, I'll just have to get jamming back on this after work tomorrow. Crazy weather. It's been sunny for like weeks and weeks, and now it is not. We're going to need to remove this grill and everything to route these wires cleanly over here, because our starting battery's here, our auxiliary battery's over there now. So we're going to have our positive off of our starting battery with a fuse breaker or a circuit breaker over here, so that way it's nice and close to this battery. And then we're going to route this cable behind the grill. But in true Venturi Fab fashion here, I'm taking the grill off, and there's some other stuff that I've wanted to do behind this grill while we're here, like add in some of those little grill running lights like they got on Raptors and Toyotas and stuff, because I think they look cool. And I got a pack of them. That's been sitting with my electrical stuff for a while, so I've got my light bar and I've got my light bar mount. So we're going to take a couple measurements and design up a little bracket to mount 4 of these guys behind the grill so that I can weld that on while it's apart, because I'm running a wire anyways. So we might as well snowball this with, while I'm in there, I might as well. It's actually a good test. I haven't had this thing apart since I built this bumper. So kind of see how everything's doing in here. I think I'll probably tidy up the wiring for the bumper too while I got this all apart, because I think I was getting a little rushed when I did it. I think some of it's a little crammed together in there. And then we're going to get this winch all the way hooked up now too. So I got to make a space for its on-off switch and get that figured out too. Boy, just keep adding to the list. So we've got our bead rolling plan. We're going to pop these panels down and then put some dimple dies in. I'll lay everything back out, see if I can maybe fit some more dimple dies where it looks cool. And let's get to bead rolling. here's where we're at. On the table, this panel looked freaking sweet, but in real life, I'm not feeling this. This is not jiving with me. So what we're gonna do, I gotta clean up my garage because it's destroyed right now from the last couple days of filming stuff. We're gonna remake this panel. I gotta clean that up. It's gotta look better than that. And then I've got some of this old wiring that was okay at the time for the bumper, but now that I'm kind of going through and digging in here and cleaning up my wiring here, we're gonna get all this cleaned up. It's just not acceptable anymore. So we're gonna get the wiring on the bumper super 100% cool. So I'm gonna really be appreciating that I made all these access panels and stuff removable. We're gonna take all this apart, clean up all my wiring, like for these lights. We're gonna clean up the wiring for this, add these lights in real quick, and get that stuff cleaned up and out of the way and routed intentionally for what we want to do down there, and make a new panel. This one fits really great. I just don't like the layout once it's in the truck. So I got that as a template. We'll cut a new one out. We'll reline everything, plug the wires in, cut them to length, all that good stuff, and then we're ready to rip. This is the driver's side battery, and we're gonna get our giddy up set up. Like I was saying, you want the circuit breaker close to the battery. So there's only gonna be a little chunk of wire here, and then it'll come off the other end of this and wrap around the whole front of the truck. So if anything happens down the line, it kills power right here, so that this is the only chunk of live wire. Everything from here and down is dead. So to start, we're gonna crimp this. I got a whole video on how to use this thing, but basically, hold it. Basically, you can set the size of your wire and your fitting in here, and then you just crimp them together, rotate it like 90 degrees, crimp it again, and you end up with a real nice crimp from multiple sides instead of like the old hammer crimps that I used forever that only crimp on a single side. So get that in there. Crimp it most of the way, and then I'm going to turn it because otherwise it'll start kind of pinching one side. It's all of this style do that. I've never had one that doesn't, so we're just going to be a little extra thoughtful about how we do this. Let's see if we can't avoid that. There we go. And so you can see, in that way it crimps it from every side. We're going to do one more because I like to stack these one next to each other, but I also want them to line up. And there we go. As opposed to a hammer crimp that just slams it in and crimps it all on one side, this crimps the whole thing to your wire. And this is 3-to-1 heat shrink. I don't know if it'll show up on there, but it's got the adhesive glue in there, so as it shrinks, it also squeezes that glue out and seals. There we go. And this is rivnutted on here, so if there's ever a problem, I can change this out easily. It's all super serviceable. There we go. So, got the cable made to go from one battery over to the isolator. And it dawned on me, maybe some of you guys have never used this stuff. So we're going to use, I think it's called PEX, the braided sleeve that's one piece, not the split loom stuff. And there's some tricks for making this easier to go on. So you'll get your piece started, and then you can push it ahead of it, and it'll bubble up, and then let it go. And push it ahead, it'll bubble up, let it go. Push it ahead, it'll bubble up, let it go. And you just work it through that way all the way down, and before you know it, you got your whole thing insulated, so you got an extra layer of resistance before it gets into cutting your tubing, so you don't need to worry about it so much. All right, well, we're going to finish tidying up the front of this here. We're going to do Deutsch connectors on both of my lights, and I switched this outside one to a clear. So we're inside amber, outside clear, and then I'm going to put the ambers, my other ambers, up on some ditch lights. And then we're going to Deutsch connector this. That way, all of this is super serviceable on its own. If you don't know how to do Deutsch connectors, I've got an entire Tool Time episode on them that came out a couple days ago. So check that out for like the in-depth, detailed version of how to do it. But real quick, the benefit of Deutsch connectors, because this is on the front of Merle, right? Which means it's going to see rain and heat and dust and snow and water and dirt and all kinds of crap. So you need your connections to be safe, not safe, but protected from the elements, right? Because that stuff all kills your electronics. So where the connectors come together, they're sealed. And where the wires go into each connector, they're also sealed. If you're just getting started with them, I recommend getting a kit. It's linked in my description for this video. It's also in the description on the in-depth of how to do these. And then, as I said in there, you want a good quality connector. Don't cheap out on your connector or your crimper. You don't need like the $300, $400 super fancy one, but don't get the $5 or $10 one. You're just going to end up fighting yourself. They don't crimp reliably, and people already don't like doing wiring. I'm kind of weird and I enjoy it because same with doing like hard lines and stuff. I can just kind of zone out and get my flow going and I get really into it. But if you have a crimper, and this goes for all wiring, right? If you have a crimper that's a pain in the butt to use, it's going to make it that much more of a chore to do it. This connector or this crimper is great. So, and it came with this kit. So the short version here, got to cut these factory tinned ends off because we're not soldering these. Then we're going to do 2 pins, right? Because each of these are going to be crimped individually. So you take the tool that comes with your kit, you hook out the first seal for the wires. You can put this seal on after you strip your wires if you want, but it's more of a pain in the butt. It's a lot easier to put it on first. Then we'll strip these. You don't need a long tail end on them. They're only going in, get 2 of these out. They're only going in that far, so you don't need a huge tag end on them for the crimp. So there we go. We'll put our fitting or our connector in the crimper. Make sure your ends aren't frayed. And that's all there is to it. We'll do the other one. And this is where having that nice crimper comes in handy, because I don't feel like I have to quadruple check everything I crimp. I know that this thing crimps good. I've used it a bunch. It's proven itself. And I trust it. There we go. And then for your own peace of mind, when you do these, kind of pick a routing like we're doing, positive on the same side on all of them, so that they are super serviceable and I don't need to think about it. Pop those in, slide your seal in. And that one's done. That's how long it takes to do a weatherproof connector when you're explaining it to someone else. Imagine how fast you can do them when you're just cranking through them. And then, I forgot to mention this in the thing earlier. They also come, you have a piece that goes in the end. It's a wedge. So otherwise these are kind of flopping around. You get your wedge, You push it in there, it locks your seal in, it locks your pins exactly where they need to go, and now you're all ready. Boom. And we are all Deutsch Connectored for our light bar. We're Deutsch Connectored for our fog lights. And then my little Raptor lights here, these are tied in with my parking lights so that whenever my parking lights come on, those will come on. All right, so we are ready to start going back together. We got driver's side battery in, everything except for the negatives. Our circuit breaker is down there. Come through here. We got these wired for Deutsch connectors. These are going to get terminated in a minute. Then across, these ones also wired. Our light is also wired. Everything is going to come through here and there. We've got our switch panel all loomed, labeled, and wired, ready to go in. We are cleaned up in here. This will get cleaned up once this guy's back in. So we can get everything pre-ran and then get this new panel that we're going to make after all this stuff's in. We'll get this new panel in, and then it's just terminating our last connections. So, doesn't look like it, but we're on the home stretch. All right, well, before I button up this front here, I'll show you what we did here. So we got our power cable here. This is all organized now. All secured. These sit on top of those panels. Got our Deutsch connectors. All our Deutsch connectors here for everything. That bundle sits on top of my plate and then behind the grill. And we're into here. Organized there. Our box is all nice and tidy behind it now. And then our lights are tucked into that corner about as best as I can. They're tucked in there about as best as I can. So that's where we're at. I'm going to get this front put together. I would have brought you along for more of that, but in all honesty, it's pretty boring watching someone wire for a couple hours. So get this front end back together, and then we're going to get that plate in, and we'll be all done. All right, so as I said earlier, we're going to remake this panel. I'm not happy with it in there. I relocated this wire, so I don't need this cutout anymore. My bead rolling got a little bit wonky, which you'd never see because it's behind the battery, but it bugs the heck out of me. But the big one is this visual weight. Like, it looks really cool on the table, but it's all wrong in the car. Like, it looks way cattywampus. So we're going to move our big heavy ones down to the bottom, and we're going to have all relays on top. And I'm not going to bead roll it at all. I'm just going to DA it so that it matches my panels on my bumper, because once you get these on here and lines and everything, there's just too many layers of like lines and shapes and all that, and it bugs the heck out of me like visually. So that's why we're remaking this. We'll transfer it over here. I'm also going to cut this end of it off because this is all behind the battery. So we're just going to swoop this over like that and then shift everything over like an inch. And then these two biggie heavy things are going to go down at the bottom, relays on top, and we'll pop it back in there. Get this thing pre-assembled and start getting some of these main jumper wires ran off here so that we can secure them to the panel while we can see. We're doing all these rivnuts are stainless, 304 stainless. All these bolts are stainless. Everything about this is designed to last a long time and be okay in the weather. So That's kind of the whole point, right? Let's say overall I am much happier with this setup than the last one. All right, so we need to get a few of these things hooked up through this hole down here while we're in here. So we've got isolator, solenoid for the winch, circuit breaker for the isolator, future circuit breaker for an inverter, future circuit breaker for an interior switch panel for heated seats and stuff, and my current switch breaker for all my external lights and all that stuff. Man, I feel like I'm about to drop the hottest rap album of 2001. It's Rob Dizzle for Shizzle. So, we're all done. We're gonna test and hope my truck doesn't catch on fire. Just kidding, I know it won't. So we've got these Raptor Toyota style grill lights are tied in with my parking light switch. Light bar's on a switch. My clear fogs that I switched to are on a switch. My amber fogs are on a switch. The power to my winch is on a remote switch now. I used a solenoid inside to activate that instead of a manual turn off switch or being hot all the time. Yeah, let's give her a shot, see what she do. See, my light came on here. Back into our rap album pose. So, everything's working as intended. My truck's not on fire. We've got our dual battery set up. I'll bring you in, we'll check all that out up close. And remember, if you don't get started, I don't know, doing really cool stuff with your truck, you'll never get finished.